substance, all substance of energy and being and purpose, are united and share the same destiny. All people, those we love and those we know not of, are united and share the same destiny. Birth to death, this unity we share with the sun, earth, our brothers and sisters, strangers, flowers in the field, snowflakes, volcanoes, and moonbeams. Birth, life, death, unknown, known, unknown. Our destiny from unknown to unknown.
Let's go ahead and sing. Can y'all hear this or no? Yeah, turn it up, Roman. I invite you to rise. Turn this one up because I don't think they can hear. Can they hear you?
Can you hear me?
No. Whoa. All right. Now let's sing a hymn. This is one of my favorites. It's Jubilate. All right, so we're going to, you could lower this one a little, Roman. We're going to do the I forgot to test the mics part of the service that all of you are so familiar with. Let's also test, this one's good? Online people, y'all are great for putting up with this. Is this one okay? Good. So welcome to the Unitarian Church. My name is Nathan. I'm one of your ministers. I'm very pleased to welcome you today. We have just a few announcements. If you're a visitor, or especially a visitor online, we're glad that you are here. Please talk to one of us or email us if you want to know more about this church. During middle hour, we are going to do art with Leslie. It is not fiber art. It is some sort of earthenware jars that involves LED lights. She was very explicit in explaining it to me, so explicit that I have forgotten what it is. But it's really cool. So this is for teens and adults in room 1 during middle hour. Also, we are starting kind of our whole life sexuality curriculum at 1 o'clock for 6th through 8th graders. That's a go. And kindergarten and first graders, except the teachers are sick, so we're going to do it next week. But we're doing sexuality education curriculum. There are 3 things for you to, well, let's do that in a second. This is up here because this is what is going to go into the kitchen starting tomorrow. So remember, because the budget came in short this year, not through a failing of the church members, but through a delayed pandemic, blah, 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 blah. So we knew we would have to do more fundraising to balance it. And so we sold these for, you didn't know you were getting such a deal. These were $5 a tile, and we needed to sell a bunch of them. I don't remember how many. But we raised $6,320. And so the only money that we have to pull out of the budget to put it in is $1,680. So that's phenomenal. You did that. Thank you. Period. And then the last thing is April 23rd, we are installing somebody. A bunch of people are coming in. And April 20, you all can clap for everything. A bunch of people are coming in for that. And we're going to have events on Saturday day and even Saturday evening, right?
Correct.
So it's like a whole weekend. So go ahead right now, block out your entire weekend because you got to do stuff during all of it. So that's on one end. On the other end, this upcoming weekend, next weekend, is Michael Dowd. He's going to have a Friday night public lecture. We're going to do a Saturday workshop for this congregation that is open to the public, but it's designed in here. And Maida, did we agree on a potluck Saturday night, or are we not there yet? Yeah, we haven't talked about it yet. So there may or may not be a potluck Saturday night, so watch your Wednesday email or listen closely at the Friday night lecture. He is an eco-theologian. We think it's important as a marker for where we are as a religious people. So that is your next thing. So I got both bookends. And then the other one is April 1st, our auction. We need donations of ideas, not necessarily things, and we have a video.
Hello, Auction Central. This is Cappy, your retired co-chair speaking. How can you help us?
Hi, Cappy. Yeah, well, you kind of got me at a bad time. But yeah, I heard that you're doing the auction again, and say it ain't so, Cappy.
Yes, Dave, we're hoping you will auction off all 100 items.
100 items? Cappy, have you any idea how much auctioneering that takes? That's a lot of bidding, a lot of arm twisting, a lot of blade begging, a lot of pleading, a lot of time. You know how many times you have to waggle your tongue for every bid? I lost my chops. I don't have my tongue. I can't do it anymore.
But Dave, what would we do without you?
Yeah, you could have members agree to be an auctioneer, give them an item, let them study up on that item, make a script and practice, and then for the auction, they could do it live.
You mean like when we had members of the congregation, like each auction off like one item?
Well, you're never going to get 100 people to volunteer to do auction items, but maybe if you limit it to 20 or 25, you'll get away with it. And actually, I'll go ahead and do the first item, then turn it over to the rest of the group. After all, I am retired.
Do you think we could get enough people to volunteer?
Folks, the auction team needs you to be an auctioneer. It's only for one item each. Please see any member of the auction team or visit the auction table after both services, and you too can be an auctioneer. Believe me, there's nothing to it. So let's keep me retired.
Thanks, Dave. So we're having the auction on April 1st. We need donations of classes, tours, trips, meals, things like that, especially green themed. And now we'll need some auctioneers.
Creativity abounds. Metamorphosis. There are 3 deaths. The first is when the body ceases to function. The second is when the body is consigned to the grave. The third is that moment sometime in the future when your name is spoken for the last time. So, you wait in this lobby until the third death. There are long tables with coffee, tea, and cookies you can help yourself to. There are people here from all around the world, and you can try to strike up a conversation with whomever you'd like. Just be aware that your conversation may be interrupted at any moment by the callers, who call out your conversation partner's name to indicate there will never again be another remembrance of him by anyone on earth. Your partner slumps out, face like a shattered and re-glued plate, saddened even though he's kindly told by the callers that he's off to a better place. No one knows where that better place is or what it offers, because no one exiting through that door has returned to tell us. Tragically, many people just leave as their loved ones arrive, since the loved ones were the only ones doing the remembering. The whole place looks like an infinite airport waiting area, but the company is terrific. There are many famous people from history books here. Not everyone is sad when the callers shout out their names, when they call as though announcing the next flight departing. On the contrary, some people beg and plead when the callers enter. They beg at the callers' feet as the next names are read out. These are generally the folks who have been here a long time, too long, and especially those who are remembered for unfair reasons. For example, take the farmer over there who drowned in a small river 200 years ago. Now his farm is the site of a small college, and the tour guides each week tell his story. So he's stuck and he's miserable. For the more his story is told, the more it drifts. He is utterly alienated from his name. It is no longer identical with him, but continues to bind. The cheerless woman across the way is painted as a saint, even though the roads in her heart were convoluted. The gray-haired man at the vending machine was lionized as a war hero, then demonized as a warlord, and finally canonized as a necessary firebrand between two moments in history. He waits with aching heart for his statues to fall, and that is the curse of this room. Since we live in the heads of those who remember us, we lose control of our lives and become who they want us to be.
So we have a card at the card table. There's a wedding. Friends of the church, Liz Traylor and Adam Courtney, got married last Sunday night here in the church. And so we're going to send them good wishes. Also, there are flowers in the kitchen area from a memorial we had yesterday for Rosemary Haney, who was a longtime member of this church. That you can watch the service online if you didn't get to attend. She's a beautiful woman with a beautiful story, powerful story. She told 4 governors what to do. This ritual we have is open to everybody, visitor and member alike. Online, use the chat as your virtual stones area. We invite those to come forward either along the west or the east wall or online. Take a stone, let it represent whatever joy or hope or fear is in your heart, and place it in the chalice bowl. We now invite those who wish to come forward as we place stones. together. With hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love.
Humans dream, and in our dreams we have night experiences different from our day experiences. We fly, turn into other creatures, walk through walls. We do all kinds of bizarre things. In fact, if we could do during the day what we do most nights in our dreams, we would be having supernatural or miraculous experiences every day. But we don't call them supernatural or miraculous because we easily distinguish our day and night experiences. Day language and night language reflect this. Day language is the language that describes what is measurably so, what is physically, consensually true. But we also add night language components, that is, interpretive components, because facts in and of themselves are not particularly evocative. They don't inspire. They need to be interpreted to be inspiring, and there's never only one right way to interpret any set of facts. Night language is the realm of poetry, myth, symbol, metaphor, and traditional religious language. It's the language that inspires. It touches the heart, moves the soul, brings us to tears, and calls us to awe. I don't know of a single example of a people's creation story explaining where we come from, why we're here, where everything is going, and why we're special as a people that doesn't have a blend of day and night elements.
Each month, this congregation generously and with humility shares one half of its weekly offering for the month with a local organization that is extending our mission and current vision into the community. This month, one half of our collected offering will go to LEAN. LEAN is the Louisiana Environmental Action Network. From its website, the purpose of LEAN is to foster cooperation and communication between individual citizens, corporate and government organizations in an effort to assess and mend the environmental problems in Louisiana.
While you were doing the script, I wanted everyone to be aware, here's what happened. Lee made the slide for LEAN that you would see, but it said April. So Lee went ahead and edited it so it would say March, added it to the OneDrive, that's where we store all the stuff. But the one that's there says Capital Area Alliance for the Homeless for March. We're not giving it to them now, we're giving it to LEAN. So
LEAN, say LEAN, everybody say LEAN.
So carry on, I just wanted you to know that is, it's a problem with how our computers decided to grab images and no one else's problem at all. Carry on.
And I'm carrying on, and who are we giving our month's offering to? LEAN. Do y'all mean it? LEAN. Do y'all mean it? LEAN. This morning's offering with humility will be accepted and shared in the same spirit. Will the ushers please come forward?
So first thing you should know, that reading you heard earlier, we're not using it today. The one about night and day language, we ran out of, I wanted you to hear that, and we ran out of weeks to talk about it before Michael Dowd got here. So take it, because it's one of the coolest readings I've ever heard. But because today we're going to explore something different. You see, this sermon is well overdue. Way back in 2019, we had an auction. And often at the auction, ministers auction off their sermon. And then we preach it the next year to promote the upcoming auction, which is April 1st. So in 2019, Tom Lee won the auction bid for this sermon, gifted it to Janet Mulder. You didn't know that you could do an exchange? Yeah, you could just peddle these around like it's its own stock market. But I had the worship scheduled for March of 2020, but so there was no auction to promo, and I wasn't even sure the church was going to make it. So to have a sermon that was, anyway, so we just didn't do it. And so here we are 3 years later, and there is an auction coming up. And now I am preaching the sermon that was bought 3 years ago. And frankly, the fact that we're at this place is good and worth celebrating. And you should know that it is Lent, and often in Lent we preach some of our more challenging topics. And so a few weeks ago I said, hey Janet, remember 3 years ago in the before times when you were gifted a one sermon? And she said yes. And I said, what do you want the sermon to be about? And she said, I was thinking about something like the meaning of life, the meaning of death. She thought about it longer, and it was probably informed by some significant deaths in her own family, or maybe she had made peace and reconciliation with some of those deaths in her life and wanted you to have some of the same spiritual muscles that her and her family had developed. Or I'm making these rationales up because when I asked her, she finally said, I want the topic to be the meaning of death. So there you go. Sunday after blues service with all the high energy. We're ready to go. Today we're preaching about death. I am no expert on death. In my non-church life, I have not experienced a lot of it, probably a dozen or so. I have, however, in the 11 years that I have served you, been engaged in some form of fashion with more than 100 deaths in this congregation. There are some patterns and things that I've noticed that might help us draw conclusions. Now, for those of you who are starting to make the mental notes and gathering your things about how you're going to get out of this service, rest assured, whenever we preach on a hard service, we put a bunch of light stuff in. And whenever you see a topic, I shouldn't tell them this. Whenever you see a really light topic, we're about to stick a bunch of hard stuff in there. So you don't have to leave for this one. What we're going to do today is first we're going to talk about death as sacred. We will have a reading from Michael Dowd about the gifts of death. Then we'll talk about some of the logistics of memorial services. Then we'll talk about the meaning of all this, and we'll sing some of your favorite hymns. We picked ones that we thought some of you would really like, which leads us into, let's rise for this next hymn. We're going to do this one all month, so get attached to it. because the mic was off for that opening reading, I'm going to read it again. This is by a Unitarian minister. All living substances, all substance of energy and being and purpose, are united and share the same destiny. All people, those we love and those we know not of, are united and share the same destiny. Birth to death. This unity we share with the sun, the earth, our family, strangers, flowers in the field, snowflakes, volcanoes, and moonbeams. Birth, life, death. Unknown, known, unknown. Our destiny, from unknown to unknown. We are all living in between mysteries, and as much pontification as I would like to do, and as much theorizing as I would like to do, as many experts as I would like to cite, as many religious claims, as many religions that claim to know the truth, the simple reality is we do not know what happens before you are born, and we do not know what happens before you die, after you die. This was made abundantly clear to me in the June of 2017. Our first child was due at the end of the month, and we had to set up his room, although we didn't know the gender at the time. I had a giant box of miscellaneous clothes. Anyone who are planning to have another kid, here's my advice. Wait until you're older than everyone else who's had kids, and then they're going to give you all their stuff. So, anyway, so I had a giant box of these clothes. Some were stained, some wouldn't fit, some were kind of gross, either in their construction or what was on them, the messages, I mean. Some were beautiful and some were wonderful. And I sat in what would now be their room, and I sorted through the clothes, and I had a realization. There are only 2 times that you sort through someone's clothes: before their birth and after their death. As I said, I don't know the answer to all of this, so I have scooped up as many answers around the edges to try to cobble together what we can see. I've put the border pieces of the puzzle together, but I have no idea what that middle image is. This is where some of Michael Dowd's work can be very impactful. More specifically, his idea that we are religiously part of the scientific story. If you acknowledge that we are made up of atoms, these atoms have been bumping into each other for billions of years. Eventually, they bumped into each other in a way that created the earth and water and plants and microorganisms. These atoms kept bumping into each other over and over. These are the same atoms that made up stardust and soil and oxygen. And these atoms bumped into each other over and over until one day they created you. So I'm clear that we are merely waves in the ocean, the beautiful and miraculous combination of atoms that will exist for a short time, and then those atoms will go on to make new and great things. But there is a level deeper to this. These atoms collided into us, but they didn't make us. They didn't make our love, our generosity, our spirituality. They didn't make it possible to have thoughts and feeling, well, kind of, but you know what I mean. But whatever that thing that connects us, the empty space between fingers that will almost touch, that cannot be explained by atoms. But that connection and our impacts will continue on for generations. Our culture has become uncomfortable talking about death. We have sterilized it, sent it out of our house and into a hospital room or a nursing home or a facility, out of our visual approximation. We have altered and manipulated theology so that death is not sacred, per se. It's not an end, it's merely a blip, a litmus test for those who are saved and those who are not. But what we lost in all of that is we lost a connection with one of the most sacred events in our lives. Sacred doesn't always mean good or joyful or happy. It means a connection with the mystery and the divine. Death is painful and relieving and fulfilling and trauma-inducing, but still sacred. And it is one of only 2 or 3 connections that we have with the mysteries beyond us, right where you're seated. Join me in a moment of prayer and reflection. Mystery that holds us together, that brings life. The God that we know when we see love and kindness and family and forgiveness and hope, be with us on this day. And hold every person, both gathered here and every person who has ever existed. Help us to know that within the 10 to 20 feet of soil around this earth is the material of everyone who has ever existed and will ever exist. Help us to know that we are made of love, and it doesn't matter if our life lasted for a minute or a year or 50 years or 150 years. It matters that we were here, and that the world is better because we are here. Help us to make peace with the world. Amen.
Without the death of stars, there could be no planets and no life. Without the death of creatures, there would be no evolution.
Without death of elders, there'd be no room for children. Without the death of fetal cells, we would all be spheres.
Without the death of plants and animals, there would be no food. Without the death of old ways of thinking, there would be no room for the new. Without death, there would be no ancestors.
Without death, time would not be precious. What then are the gifts of death? The gifts of death are Mars and Mercury, Saturn and Earth. The gifts of death are the atoms of stardust within our bodies. The gifts of death are the splendors of shape and form and color.
The gifts of death are diversity, the immense journey of life. The gifts of death are food, the sustenance of life. The gifts of death are seeing, hearing, feeling, deeply feeling. The gifts of death are the urgency to act, the desire to fully be and become.
The gifts of death are joy and sorrow, laughter and tears. The gifts of death are lives that are fully and exuberantly lived, then graciously and gratefully given up for now and forevermore.
So like I said, we're supposed to talk about the meaning of death, and I don't have an answer to that. I got the pieces around the edge of the puzzle, but the image, that's the work that all of us do. Because I've officiated my fair share of memorial services and been to the deaths of many church members and friends of church members, there are some things that I've noticed. First, there is a difference between sudden and unexpected deaths. There are only 5 kinds of unexpected deaths. You could lower this one, or one of them's too hot. Did you know there's only 5 kinds of unexpected deaths? Accident, cardiac event, stroke, suicide, homicide. There may be 1 or 2 more, but it illustrates the point that most deaths are not a surprise. Every death has good and bad with it. A sudden death means no lingering, no worrying, no exhaustive nights of caretaking. But it also means there was no ability to do reconciliation, or for the person who died to find out how cared for they were. Expected deaths are problematic as well because they often involve a slow, painful decline. It provides existential challenges for you and your loved ones. And it usually requires a lot of caretaking, and usually after the death, caretakers feel relieved and then guilty for feeling relieved. Anyone have that feeling? Yeah? So here's the insider trick for the minister. I always guess that you're feeling relieved and guilty for feeling relieved, because that's usually what happens, so we're not particularly insightful except to have noticed it over and over. Death has this tendency to illuminate all of the things that went well and didn't go well in your life. So if there was dysfunction in your family growing up, it's likely death is going to turn the volume way up on that. This is not universal. This is more of an aggregate tendency. There could be any change or shift in how people are with it. In other words, though, the pattern that I've seen is the more that you invest in your own spiritual maturity and relationships today, it will pay off when you die, not just for you, but for your loved ones as well. Also, it is important to let other people go on the journey with you. Talking about death, grieving about it out loud, these do not make it harder on people, they make it easier. Give people permission to help you through the process because it helps them. And be ready for the people who are not ready to go on that journey with you to disappear or to try to fix it. I've never seen a death where that didn't happen in some way. Talk about what is important enough for you enough. Talk about what is important to you enough so that when you die, loved ones will have an idea of what they can put into your memorial service. So here's my little memorial service trick. Part of the grieving process is looking through pictures, planning the memorial service. So you don't want to give people too many ideas of what you want, and you don't want to leave it too much of a mystery. How many of you remember Jeanette Creel? She was a member of this church for a long, long time. She had, I'm going to say on her desk, it could have been on her, I don't know where it was, but she had a folder that she labeled My Memorial. And any time she saw a poem or an order of service or whatever song she liked, she put a little note and stuck it in that file. And so when she died, her families opened it up and they had like a whole array of choices for what they wanted to use for that service. All right, so I'm going to should all over you for a minute. Are you okay with that? No. Well, too bad because I wrote it out and I can't change it. So stick with me for this. I try to not do a lot of should to you, but here's my shoulds. A memorial service is not for you. It is for everybody else. Please do not tell people not to have a memorial service for you. It is part of their healing process. And you take that away from them when you say you don't want it. Let people love you. And if that doesn't work, memorial services are like our best recruiting tool. So, it's true. Do y'all listen to the Jim Inkster show ever? He's on NPR station. If he ever brings a Unitarian on, it's like clockwork. He'll never hear this, so it'll be fine. He always mentions the one memorial service that he went to before. I've been here 11 years. It was long before that. Every time. Have you been on it yet? No. He's going to bring it up. Anyway, so if you don't want to make it about people caring for you and being able to grieve you, make it just so it'll help the church. The reason our memorial services are so good, and it's not really to recruit, it's because we get out of the way and we let the person's story be told. Our goal at a memorial service is to let whoever it is that died shine through. So it's not that we did anything, it's that we let the person shine through. That is as much theology as you could ever get in a church. Also, you should negotiate like crazy with funeral homes. They stand to make a lot of money from your death and from your grief. Costs more than a car sometimes. Watch the negotiating tactics they use. They may bring in a bunch of people to pressure you, so you bring in more people. You can tell them, I'm not doing a service here, we're going somewhere else. You can question every line in a memorial service, like at the funeral home. Line by line, make them tell you what that money's going for. And if they want to sell you a $75 guest book, don't buy it. Go buy an $8 guest book and then buy something nice for yourself for $60. Also, get a lot of death certificates. I'm talking like 1 or 2 dozen of them. You need them for all kinds of weird things, and if you have them, you don't have to go back to the funeral home to get more. And that's also not, the funeral home gets money from you elsewhere, not from the death certificates. The most important thing to do during and after a death is to slow down. Your body feels like it is in crisis, but it is not. Your brain and your heart and your lungs are doing all of the things they would normally do when you are trying to escape danger, like a tiger or something. But there is no imminent threat. What you are experiencing is your brain knowing you did a thing that caused you pain, touching a hot stove, for example, but not being able to figure out what you did to avoid replicating it. Going slowly is important. Think about grief as like a tent canvas draped on top of you. It is going to be there for years. A prayer around the body after a death. Seeing your loved one's body for the last time, attending the cremation, sorting through the pictures, sorting through the clothes, talking about them, waiting for a month or two to do a memorial service. All of these are tent posts that you could stick up to lift the canvas off of your body. And if you use them all at once, it's harder to, it can just get to be overwhelming. That's a lot of should. Are y'all good? Ooh, I rhymed. All right. Choir, would you go ahead and come forward? We're going to have you stand here, and then we'll do the reading, and then you'll sing.
Our third reading is excerpted from the writing of a dear friend and amazing musician, Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout. A more extensive reading shared as a General Assembly. They wrote, We're getting Michelangelo all wrong. God is not the bearded ones surrounded by angels floating over the Sistine. He's not Adam with his muscled back pressing the earth. No. God is the closing inch of space between their reaching fingers. Still, God is no spring blossom, no wood thrush. God is neither the sun nor the bee. God is what we see in the blossom. God is when you hear the river and suddenly discover how much of it is a part of you. To be clear, God is not you. God is somewhere in the 14 billion years which have come to mean that you are.
Hallelujah.
it matters how much you love someone. It matters that you do your work to be at peace with yourself, with God, and with others. Preserving life is not the goal, because all of us one day will die. All of us will return to the mystery that none of us truly understand, and that is okay, and that is sacred. We went to a minister's retreat all week, and I asked some of their wisdom. Actually, we went to the retreat. How many of you have been to Woodworth, Louisiana? Yes? Yes? Yeah, a few of you. Anyway, so we're driving. This is his first time. We start on the big old Interstate 10, then we get down to a little bit smaller Interstate 190, and then we get smaller and smaller and smaller until, anyway, in the middle of central Louisiana, there's a giant Methodist retreat center. They gave us the run of the place. There was like 2 people there. They had a sign that said, "Call Nick if you need something." Patrick was on day 1 and 3. Nick was on day 2 and 4. We talked to Patrick much more than Nick. Nick didn't want to talk to us as much. Anyway. All right, Nick's going to find this and hear about this now. Anyway. So I asked some of the ministers there the wisdom because I knew I was going to preach on this service. And I got a few pieces of wisdom that will largely go unnamed because they were part of the larger mass of conversations. Just know these came from Unitarian Universalist ministers from Louisiana, Arkansas, Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma, and I can't give full credit to any of them. One colleague said the topic of this is challenging because we are all living with a low level of depression right now. The combination of all of the things that we are going through leaves us with a diminished capacity to understand any of this stuff. And specifically as it relates to the pandemic recovery. One said, like when we had a hurricane, there was someone outside of our frame of reference that we can turn to and say, hey, is what we went through reasonable, not reasonable? Like someone who's not affected can kind of guide us. But the thing that we've been through these last 3 years, there is no one who exists who is outside of that reference. So we're all sort of stuck in this together. One minister quoted a colleague. She was at the center of the AIDS crisis in the 80s. And she says, it doesn't matter if we all survive. What matters is that we love well. Finally, one minister said that we Unitarian Universalists love to have everything tied up nice and neat. We love to go build a house and to go fix something. But sometimes things just can't be fixed. Sometimes we just have to be in awe. The meaning of death is the work each of us does. That discernment is our religious work. But what death does point me to is how important it is about how we live our lives, how we love people, how we love ourselves, how we remember people, how we allow the God that is that space between the fingers to exist, and honor that we are only here because of the billions of years of struggles that made it so that we could be here. And that when we are gone, every single thing that makes us will continue on to bless the world in new and different ways. Amen. Let's go ahead and rise, sing this hymn.
For the blessings we have known.
When a wave ends, the ocean doesn't disappear, but the shoreline is forever changed. Go in peace, go in love. Amen.